The judge looked down from his high bench, not at me, but at my son and his beautiful, clever wife. His face was a mask of cold fury, and he said the words I had waited a full year to hear. You did not see a mother. You saw an obstacle, and that is not just a moral failing. It is fraud. Hi everyone, I'm Grandma Beatrice. My name is Beatrice Miller. I'm 81 years old, and for 55 years, my home was in a lovely, quiet town in rural Pennsylvania. The story I'm about to share with you is a difficult calculation. It is the story of a long and terrible equation, an equation of love and trust and betrayal that almost didn't add up. It is a secret I have kept locked away, a private proof that I have never shared with anyone. My old friends from my bridge club, my former neighbors, they all know that my son and I are estranged. They know there was a terrible legal battle. They think it was just a sad, ugly fight over a house. They do not know that it was a fight for my own mind. They do not know that my own child, my only son, and the woman he loves, a woman I welcomed as a daughter, waged a quiet, systematic war to convince me, and the world, that I was losing my sanity, all for a piece of property. There is a particular kind of cruelty in being told you are crazy by the people you trust the most. It is a poison that works slowly. They chip away at your confidence, a little at a time, with so much love, so much concern, that you begin to help them do it. You become an accomplice in your own erasure. The shame of it, the shame of doubting your own memory, of questioning your own perceptions. It is a loneliness so profound. It feels like the whole world has tilted on its axis, and only you are left sliding off. I am telling this story now because I have finally done the math. I have balanced the ledger, and I know that their cruelty is a debt that belongs to them, not to me. And I am telling it for anyone out there who has ever been made to feel like a faulty equation, for anyone who has been told that their own mind is a place they can no longer trust. Before I begin to lay out the proof, step by painful step, I would be so very grateful for your support. Please, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your presence, your willingness to listen, it is a great comfort. It gives this old woman the strength to finally open up the docket and present the case that has, until now, been sealed in my own heart. Thank you, my dears. Thank you for that. My life, for 53 years, was a partnership built on a foundation of mutual respect and quiet, unshakable logic. My late husband, my dear Frank, was a contractor. He was a man who believed in solid foundations, in straight lines, and in numbers that added up. He was not a poet, he was a problem solver. His hands were calloused from work, but his mind was a thing of beautiful, intricate precision. He saw the world as a complex, but ultimately solvable, equation. I was a high school math teacher. For 40 years, I taught algebra and geometry. I loved the elegance of it, the certainty. I loved showing young, anxious minds that even the most complex problems could be broken down, step by step, into a simple, elegant solution. Our life together was like that. It was not a life of grand, dramatic gestures. It was a life of quiet, steady, and beautifully logical partnership. We were a team, Frank and I, a team that knew how to solve for X. We built our world together in a solid, sensible, two-story house in a quiet neighborhood. It was not a mansion. It was a fortress of security that we built together, one carefully planned step at a time. While Frank built the bookshelves in the den, I was the one who calculated the load-bearing capacity of the shelves. While I planned the garden, he was the one who calculated the precise pH balance of the soil. And he was my partner in all things, especially our finances. Every year, at tax time, we would sit at this very kitchen table, and we would do the books together. He taught me everything. He taught me how to read a mortgage statement, how to understand an amortization table, how to calculate the return on a long-term investment. You have to know this, B, he would always say, his voice full of a quiet, earnest insistence. This is our life's work. You are my partner. You need to know the numbers. A person who doesn't understand their own numbers, they are a guest in their own life. I never want you to be a guest. He was not a man who believed in leaving his wife in the dark. He believed in empowerment. He believed in knowledge. He made sure I was not just his loving wife. I was his competent, knowledgeable, and equal partner, fully capable of managing the small, secure, and perfectly balanced world we had built together. He was a good teacher. He was preparing me for a final exam he could never have imagined I would have to face. We had one child, our son, Michael. Oh, he was a good boy. A wonderful boy. The joy of our lives. But he was not like us. He had my love of history and his father's kind heart, but he had none of our love for the clean, beautiful logic of numbers. Michael finds numbers tedious. He is a musician, a wonderful pianist. He lives in a world of emotion, of passion, of things that cannot be quantified. He is a good man, a loving son, but he is a man who has always been happy to let someone else handle the boring details of life, the things that require a calculator. For most of his life, that someone was his father, or me. And then, it was his wife. I should have seen the signs. I should have paid closer attention to the equation. But I was so happy for him, so relieved that my gentle, artistic son had found a woman who seemed so strong, so capable, so grounded. I allowed my heart to overrule my head. I made a catastrophic mathematical error. And then, 7 years ago, Michael brought Jessica home. And she was, I must admit, a perfect solution to the problem of my son. She was a nurse, an ICU nurse, a profession that requires a unique blend of compassion and a will of absolute unbending steel. She was beautiful, but it was a quiet, competent beauty. She was a woman who seemed to be a harbor in any storm. My son, my gentle dreamer of a son, was utterly, completely, and hopelessly in love with her. He saw in her the strength, the practicality, the ability to navigate the sharp-edged world that he had always lacked. She was his anchor, and he was so proud of her. She was brilliant with me and Frank. She was not a flatterer. Her charm was in her competence. She would listen to my husband talk about the structural integrity of a bridge, and she would ask sharp, intelligent questions. She would look at my meticulously planned garden, and she would not just admire the flowers, she would admire the logic of the companion planting. She spoke of our home with a kind of professional reverence. "You two have built a beautiful life," she'd said to me one afternoon as we sat on the back porch. "It's so solid, so secure. It's the kind of foundation every family dreams of. A safe place." She saw the safety, the security, the foundation. That should have been my first clue. She didn't see a home. She saw a fortress. And I did not realize, until it was far too late, that she was not admiring it. She was assessing its defenses. And she was planning a very quiet, very patient, and very long siege. After my Frank passed away from a sudden, massive heart attack 4 years ago, the logic of my world dissolved. Grief is not a logical thing. It is a chaotic, disorienting fog. And for the first time in my life, the numbers didn't add up. The neat, balanced equation of my 53-year partnership was gone, and I was left with an answer that made no sense. I was a widow. I was alone. Michael, my dear boy, was devastated. He was lost. His father had always been his North Star, the fixed point in his emotional universe. And in his grief, he leaned, completely and utterly, on the one person who seemed to have all the answers. He leaned on Jessica. And Jessica, my goodness, she was a marvel. In the terrible, chaotic days after the funeral, she was a pillar of calm, quiet, and formidable competence. She was the nurse, the caregiver, the manager of our family's sorrow. She handled everything. She organized the memorial service with a quiet, dignified precision that was breathtaking. She managed the flood of well-meaning friends and neighbors, her voice a constant, soothing murmur of gratitude and control. She cooked, she cleaned, she answered the phones. She was a saint, a perfect, tireless angel of mercy. And I, lost in the deepest, most profound fog of my life, was so deeply, so desperately grateful. I saw a daughter. I did not see a predator. Her takeover of my life was not a sudden coup. It was a slow, gentle, and perfectly logical transition of power. It began, as I'm sure it so often does, with the paperwork. The mountain of paperwork that death leaves behind. "Oh, Beatrice, honey," she began, her voice a soft, gentle melody of compassion. She placed a cup of tea beside my hand and stood behind me, her hands resting on my shoulders in a gesture of pure, supportive strength. "You shouldn't be doing this. Not now. You are in mourning. This is just noise. It can wait." "It can't wait, dear," I said, my voice weary as I looked at a complex brokerage statement. "Frank always said, you have to keep the books balanced." "I know," she said, and her voice was full of a deep and sincere admiration. "He was the most competent, organized man I have ever known. And he taught you so well." She paused, a perfect, calculated beat. "But he would not want you to be torturing yourself with this. He would want you to be cared for. He would want me to help you." She gently took a file from my hands. "Please," she whispered. "I'm an ICU nurse. I deal with life and death paperwork every single day. I understand this world of forms, and deadlines, and fine print. Let me be your hands and eyes for a little while. Let me take this one terrible burden off your shoulders. It would be my honor to help you manage Frank's legacy." Her logic was, as always, flawless. Her offer was a lifeline in a sea of grief. How could I refuse? To do so would have seemed ungrateful, stubborn, foolish. So I let her. I sat with her for days as she patiently, lovingly went through every file. I explained our system, the one Frank and I had built together. I showed her the ledgers. I gave her the passwords to the online accounts. I answered her every question. I was the teacher, passing on a lifetime of knowledge. I had no idea I was, in fact, the patient, and that she was conducting the most thorough, detailed, and chillingly intimate diagnostic assessment of my entire life. She wasn't just organizing my present. She was mapping my past, and she was planning my future. Once she had a complete and encyclopedic knowledge of my financial world, her quiet, insidious campaign began. It was a campaign of 1,000 tiny paper cuts, a slow, methodical erosion of my own belief in my own competence. She would sit with me to review the monthly bills. She would hold up an electric bill. "Now, Beatrice," she'd say, her voice full of a gentle, pedagogical patience, "I see here that you paid this bill on the 15th, but you also paid it on the 1st. You've paid it twice. It's okay, honey. I was able to get the company to credit the account. But we have to be more careful. It's so easy to get confused. We never." Of course I hadn't paid it twice. I had paid it on the 1st, as I had done for 50 years. She had then helpfully paid it again from the online account she now controlled. But she didn't tell me that. She just showed me the statement, the undeniable, black and white proof of my mistake. And I, my mind still clouded with grief, would be consumed with a hot, terrible shame. How could I have done that? She's right. I'm getting so forgetful. She did it with everything. A check to the church that she claimed I had written for the wrong amount. A subscription to a magazine that she said I had renewed twice. A property tax payment that she insisted I had forgotten to mail. Each incident was a small, perfectly constructed piece of evidence in the case she was building. The case for my own decline. And my son, my dear, gentle Michael, was the judge and jury in this quiet, domestic trial. She would present him with her findings, her voice always full of a deep, sorrowful, and loving concern for me. "I just don't know what to do, Michael," she would sigh, her beautiful face a mask of weary devotion. "I love your mother so much, but she's not the woman she was. The mistakes are getting more frequent. I'm so afraid she's going to make a serious error, one that I can't fix. We have to do something to protect her from herself." And Michael, a man who hated numbers and loved his brilliant, capable wife, believed her. He saw the documents. He saw the proof. And he saw a saint, patiently, lovingly, trying to manage the unraveling mind of his aging mother. He would come to visit me, his face full of a sad, pained love. "Mom," he'd say, his voice a low, gentle plea. "Please, just let Jessica handle everything. She knows what she's doing. It's too much for you. We're just worried about you." Karen, Averni, Anisidaran. I was being trapped. Not in a cage of steel and bars, but in a cage of their love, their concern, their relentless, suffocating care. Every attempt I made to assert my own competence was seen as further proof of my confusion, of my stubborn denial of my own failing mind. The ground was being perfectly prepared. The narrative was set. And I, the woman who had spent a lifetime believing in the clean, beautiful logic of numbers, was now living in a world where the numbers no longer made sense. A world where I could no longer trust my own calculations. I was becoming the person she needed me to be, a confused, incompetent, and utterly powerless old woman. A problem just waiting for a final, loving, and logical solution. With the foundation of my incompetence now firmly laid, with my own son thoroughly convinced that I was a dear but fading woman, in need of constant supervision, Jessica's campaign moved from the quiet, domestic theater of my home into a much colder and more dangerous arena. She was no longer just collecting anecdotes. She was now preparing for a legal, state-sanctioned execution of my independence. Her new weapon was the medical establishment. It began with my annual checkup. Jessica insisted on coming with me. "I'm a nurse, Beatrice," she'd said, her voice full of that unshakable professional authority. "I can help you ask the right questions. I can help you understand the doctor's answers. It's just sensible." In the doctor's office, she was a masterpiece of loving, daughterly concern. But she was also a brilliant, manipulative strategist. Before I could even speak, she presented the doctor with her little black journal, the one where she had been so diligently documenting my decline. "We've been so worried, doctor," she said, her beautiful face a mask of profound, loving anxiety. "The memory lapses are becoming more frequent. She's misplacing things constantly. She's paying bills twice. Last week, she couldn't remember her own granddaughter's birthday. A complete and utter lie. I'm a nurse, so of course my mind goes to the worst-case scenarios. I need to know if we should be testing for something, for dementia, for Alzheimer's." She was not asking a question. She was planting a diagnosis. She was using her professional credibility as a nurse to frame my ordinary, age-related forgetfulness as the early stages of a catastrophic cognitive decline. The doctor, a good man but an overworked one, listened to this intelligent, articulate, and deeply concerned nurse. He looked at her detailed, dated notes, and he looked at me, an 80-year-old woman who was suddenly feeling flustered and on the defensive. And he did what any doctor would do. He took her concerns seriously. "Well, Beatrice," he'd said to me, his kind face now etched with a new professional worry. "Perhaps it would be a good idea to run a few cognitive assessments, just to get a baseline." I left that doctor's office with a referral to a neurologist and a cold, sickening feeling in the pit of my stomach. She was building a medical case against me. A case that would, I knew, eventually lead to one thing: a legal petition to have me declared mentally incompetent. A legal maneuver that would give her and my son, meaning her, complete and total control over my life, my finances, and my home. The months that followed were a quiet, waking nightmare of medical appointments and psychological tests. I was poked. I was prodded. I was asked to draw clocks and remember lists of words. And through it all, Jessica was there, my loving, supportive shadow, her face a constant mask of pained, hopeful concern. The tests, of course, all came back with the same result. I was an 81-year-old woman with a mind as sharp as a tack. I had the normal, age-appropriate memory lapses of a person my age, but there was no sign of dementia, no sign of Alzheimer's. I was, for my age, in exceptional cognitive health. But, for every normal test result, Jessica had a counter-narrative. "It's the good days and the bad days," she would whisper to the doctors, just out of my earshot. "Today was a good day, but the bad days, they are getting so much worse." She has moments of terrifying clarity, and then she just slips away again. She was so convincing, so credible. She was slowly, methodically, turning my own health into a lie. She was making my own sanity look like a temporary, fleeting symptom of my underlying and inevitable decay. The final, brutal, and heart-shattering blow came not in a doctor's office, but in a courtroom. I received a notice in the mail, a legal summons. My son, Michael Miller, and his wife, Jessica Miller, were petitioning the state of Pennsylvania for a conservatorship over my person and my estate. The reason? Advanced cognitive decline and an inability to manage her own financial and personal affairs. It was the culmination of her entire 2-year campaign. All the little lies, all the manufactured confusion, all the manipulated medical concerns had led to this. A cold, legal, and public declaration that I was no longer a person. I was a problem to be solved. I sat in that cold, quiet courtroom, and I listened as their lawyer, a slick, sharp man in an expensive suit, laid out the case against me. He presented the evidence of my financial incompetence, the double-paid bills, the forgotten payments, also carefully orchestrated by Jessica. He presented the doctor's notes, filled with Jessica's concerns about my failing memory. He painted a picture of a loving son and his devoted, medically trained wife, who were making a heartbreaking but necessary decision to protect their beloved, but tragically incompetent, mother. And then he called his first witness to the stand. My son, my Michael. I watched as my own child, the boy I had raised, the boy whose very life I had cherished above my own, walked to the witness stand. I watched as he placed his hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. The whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And then I listened as he lied. He was a brilliant witness. He was so full of a genuine, palpable, and heartbroken love for me. His voice trembled with a sorrow that was so real, so convincing, it almost made me believe him myself. He told the court about my confusion. He told them about my memory lapses. He told them how he and his sainted wife were so deeply, deeply worried that I was a danger to myself. "We love my mother more than words can say, Your Honor," he said, his eyes filling with tears as he looked at me, a look of pure, agonizing love. "This is the hardest thing we have ever had to do, but we cannot stand by and watch her decline. We have to protect her. It is our duty, as her children." He was not a monster. He was not evil. He was just weak. He was a man who had been so completely, so masterfully manipulated by his wife that he had come to believe her narrative was the truth. He truly believed he was saving me. He had no idea he was the weapon she was using to destroy me. I sat there, and I listened to my own son testify to my insanity. And in that moment, something inside me finally, irrevocably broke. The part of me that still loved him. The part of me that still made excuses for him. The part of me that still saw the little boy with flour on his nose. It all just died. And in the cold, empty, and silent space where that mother's love had once lived, something else was born. A cold, clear, and diamond-hard resolve. The resolve of a mathematician who has finally seen the flaw in the equation and who now knows, with absolute certainty, how to solve it. They thought they had me. They thought they had won. They had presented their case. They had my son's heartbreaking testimony. They had the doctor's notes. They had the financial records. They had a mountain of carefully constructed lies. They had no idea that I, the quiet, confused old woman at the defendant's table, had something they didn't. I had the truth. And I had the receipts. And my own final star witness was about to take the stand. And that witness was me. After my son stepped down from the witness stand, A heavy funereal silence filled the courtroom. He had been the perfect witness. His testimony was so full of love, of pain, of a son's genuine, heartfelt concern, that it had sealed my fate. I looked at the judge's face, and I saw that she believed him. I looked at my own court-appointed lawyer, a young, overwhelmed man who had already written me off as a lost cause. He gave me a small, sad, sympathetic shrug. The case was over. Jessica and her lawyer certainly thought so. They were exchanging small, triumphant smiles. My son, my poor broken son, was weeping silently beside his wife, and she was comforting him, her hand stroking his back in a gesture of pure, loving, and utterly false compassion. And then the judge turned to me. "Mrs. Miller," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "do you have anything you would like to say in your own defense?" This was it. The moment. My one and only move. I stood up. Slowly. My hands were not trembling. I was not the confused, frail old woman they had so brilliantly painted. I was a high school math teacher, and I was about to teach the final, most important lesson of my life. "Yes, Your Honor," I said, and my voice did not tremble. It was clear, it was steady, and it was filled with the quiet, unshakable authority of a woman who was about to speak the truth. I did not look at my son. I did not look at his wife. I looked directly at the judge. "Your Honor," I began, "for the past hour, you have heard a great deal of testimony about my confusion, my incompetence, and my failing mind. You have heard a story, a very sad and very convincing story about a loving son and his devoted wife who are trying to protect their aging, senile mother. It is a beautiful story. The only problem with it is that it is a lie." A small, shocked murmur went through the courtroom. Jessica's serene smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "It is a lie," I continued, my voice gaining strength, "that has been meticulously, methodically, and brilliantly constructed over the past 2 years by my daughter-in-law, Mrs. Jessica Miller. She is a nurse, and she has used her medical knowledge not to care for me, but to create the illusion of my decline. She has used her access to my home, my life, and my son's love to build a case against me, a case built on a foundation." Their lawyer leaped to his feet. "Objection, Your Honor. The witness is making baseless, slanderous accusations." The judge looked at him, then at me. "Mrs. Miller," she said, her voice stern, "these are very serious allegations. Do you have any proof to substantiate them?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said calmly. "I do." And then I did something no one in that room expected. I walked to the witness stand myself. I did not have a lawyer to question me. I did not need one. I had my own questions, and I had the answers. I presented the court with my own evidence. I did not present it with emotion. I presented it with the clean, cold, and irrefutable logic of a mathematician, presenting a proof. My first piece of evidence was a simple, spiral-bound notebook. My journal. "For the past 2 years," I explained, "since my daughter-in-law began helping me with my finances, I have kept a meticulous daily record of every single financial transaction, every bill paid, every check written. It is a habit my late husband, a contractor, taught me 50 years ago. He called it keeping the books balanced." I then presented the court with Exhibit A, the electric bill that I had supposedly paid twice. My journal showed my single correct payment, logged on the 1st of the month, and my bank statement, which Jessica had so kindly provided to her own lawyer, showed my check clearing on the 5th. But it also showed a second online payment made on the 15th of the month. "A payment, Your Honor," I said, "made from an IP address that the computer experts at the public library helped me trace to the home of my son and daughter-in-law. I did it for every single one of their accusations. The forgotten property tax bill? I had a copy of the certified mail receipt, proving I had mailed it on time. Jessica's helpful second payment had been made a week later. The check I had supposedly written for the wrong amount? I had the carbon copy from my own checkbook, showing the correct amount, and the bank's own image of the cash check, which had been subtly, expertly altered. One by one, I dismantled their entire case. I used their own evidence, the evidence they had so arrogantly provided to prove my incompetence, to prove their fraud. I was not a confused old woman. I was a meticulous and deeply underestimated bookkeeper. My final piece of evidence was the most damning. I presented the court with the transcripts of my medical examinations, the cognitive tests, the neurologist's report, all of them stating, in clear, unequivocal medical language, that I was of sound and superior mind. And then I presented a final, sworn affidavit. It was from the pharmacist at my local drugstore, a man who had known me for 30 years. He testified that my daughter-in-law, Jessica, had on 3 separate occasions requested refills of my blood pressure medication weeks before they were due, claiming I had losed the bottle. He testified that she had also, on those same occasions, purchased large quantities of over-the-counter sleeping aids. The same aids whose chemical signature a private lab had confirmed was found in a sample of the tea she had so lovingly been preparing for me every night. I had not been declining. I had been being drugged. When I was finished, a profound and absolute silence filled the courtroom. I looked at my daughter-in-law. Her beautiful, compassionate face was a mask of pure, reptilian hatred. She was a snake that had just been charmed out of its basket, and she knew it. And then I looked at my son. He was staring at me, his face a wasteland of dawning, horrified, and soul-shattering understanding. He was a man who was seeing the truth for the very first time. He was seeing the monster he had married, and he was seeing the mother he had betrayed. The judge cleared her throat. She looked at Jessica and her lawyer, her face a mask of cold, judicial fury. "In all my years on this bench," she said, her voice a low, dangerous rumble, "I have never witnessed a more blatant, more cruel, and more predatory attempt to manipulate the legal system and to abuse a vulnerable member of our community. This is not just a petition for a conservatorship. This is a criminal conspiracy." She dismissed the petition, of course, with prejudice, which meant they could never, ever file it again. And then she turned to the district attorney, who was present in the courtroom, and she said 2 words, "You may proceed." The aftermath was swift, and it was absolute. Jessica was charged with perjury, forgery, and multiple counts of elder fraud. Faced with my mountain of irrefutable evidence, she took a plea bargain. She served 18 months in a state penitentiary. She is out now. My son, my Michael, he divorced her, of course. The revelation of her true nature and of his own terrible, willing blindness broke him. He sold their house. He left his job. He moved away. He writes to me sometimes. Long, rambling, heartbroken letters of apology. I have not yet found it in my heart to answer. The wound is too deep. The betrayal of a child is a wound that, I am afraid, may never truly heal. I sold my house, the house my Frank and I had built. It was no longer a home. It had become a courtroom, a battlefield, and it was filled with too many ghosts. I bought this small, quiet apartment. It is enough. I learned that the most dangerous lies are the ones told with a loving smile. And I learned that when someone tries to steal your mind, to steal your reality, you must fight back not with emotion, but with facts. You must become a better, more meticulous, and more patient accountant of the truth than they are of their lies. They thought I was a sentimental old woman. They forgot I was a mathematician. They tried to build a case against me, but they made a fatal error. They forgot to check their own math. And my proof, in the end, was absolute. So if you are out there, and you feel the walls of someone else's narrative closing in on you, remember this, old woman. Keep a journal. Save your receipts. And never, ever let anyone convince you that you are not the most reliable narrator of your own life. Thank you for letting me share my story with you. It is a good reminder, I think, to always show your work. If you have found strength in this difficult tale, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on that little notification bell so you don't miss what's next. And in the comments below, please feel free to share a story about a time when a simple, undeniable fact was your greatest weapon. Love you all. This is Grandma Beatrice, and I'll see you in the next story.